Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
After apparently stating that the Mandalorian and Grogu were apart for nearly 2 years while Grogu was off training with Luke Skywalker, producer Jon Favreau gave a closer look at the actual timeline to clear things up. Hey there guys, Unofficial Star Wars here. I hope you're all doing well, and if you aren't up to date, a couple of days ago, before the Mandalorian Season 3 premiere, Jon Favreau recently stated in an interview that Grogu had been training with Luke Skywalker for around 2 years. Or that's at least what he made it seem like when he worded it that way. That's something that we recently discussed here on the channel. You guys can check that video out now. Although all things considered, that video doesn't necessarily matter all that much anymore since Jon Favreau has come out to really clear things up here to give us the actual timeline of how everything's taking place in the Mandoverse. So to really clear things up with how long was Grogu with Luke Skywalker. In this video, we're going to be taking a read from the direct article. I'll have their article linked in the description down below for you guys to check out there as well. As a read, it has been over 2 years since the Season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, and many Star Wars fans have questioned just how long Grogu spent training with Luke Skywalker. With the premiere of Season 3 available now, some Star Wars fans also wondered how much time has passed since the two characters reunited that we did see in the Book of Boba Fett since now in the Season 3 premiere. And to the dismay of many Star Wars fans out there, as I had mentioned, series producer and showrunner Jon Favreau had recently gave an answer to that question, saying that Grogu and Din Djarin were apart for 2 whole years. Or that's at least how long he made it seem when he worded it that way. From there, many Star Wars fans expressed their disappointment with that revelation, wondering why so much time had passed with Din seemingly doing nothing aside from aiding Boba Fett for a couple of days on Tatooine. Although, as new light is being shined down on this topic and this subject here to clear the air, how long was Grogu away from the Mandalorian? I would also like to quickly point out, to be fair, I never really thought and believed. I think that he was simply kind of wording it wrong and meant that we hadn't really seen Din Djarin and Grogu together on screen since 2 years, since the Season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, is I believe the way that he had been wording it, and I think that's exactly what he's going to be saying here essentially, and to clear things up here in a recent interview with Variety at the world premiere of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, producer Jon Favreau was asked about his recent comments on how long Grogu was training with Luke Skywalker. Jon Favreau recently said that Grogu trained with Luke for 2 years before being reunited in the Book of Boba Fett, which set the Star Wars fandom ablaze. However, Favreau more recently clarified that the time between all of the events, saying that it goes hand in hand with quote-unquote the real time that we've experienced it. The producer stated that Grogu and Din Djarin reunited about a year ago, and the total time that has passed since Season 2 and 3 is between 0 and 2 years. Saying that in full quote from Jon Favreau himself, I don't know if I said many years, it's probably about the real time that we've experienced it. So it was the end of Season 2 when they said goodbye. We checked in the Book of Boba Fett about a year ago when they parted company again, and then rejoined The Mandalorian. So now I think somewhere in there, more than 1 and less than, you know, somewhere between 0 and 2 years, ending that quote right there. When it was stated that the two main characters were apart that many years, Favreau responded with, no, not that many years, into response saying that, Jon Favreau, didn't you say that they were apart for 2 years? And into response to that, he's saying that, no, I didn't mean it like that. Favreau then jokingly went on to say that he is running out of screen time because of how many different stories they want to tell as well, saying that part in full quote, we're running out of screen time, you know, we only have 30 years to tell all of our stories, and we have a lot more stories to tell. Ending that quote right there, of course, into the aspect of how The Mandalorian is taking place directly after the events of the original trilogy with Return of the Jedi, and it's supposed to span across nearly 30 years leading up to the events of the sequels with The Force Awakens and Star Wars Resistance animated show. So for those of you that are curious, is The Mandalorian ending anytime soon? Probably not. There is so much more that is to come here with this overall Mandoverse, and I'm here for it. I can't wait. This here all being said, does Jon Favreau's explanation solve fans' issues here with this 2-year gap here, essentially? If the timeline of The Mandalorian acts in cohesion with the real world, essentially, then Season 2 took place 1 year after Season 1, and the Book of Boba Fett followed a year after that same timeline. It is a little more believable that Grogu spent a year with Luke Skywalker rather than 2, as fans have stated. It would be a stretch for Grogu to spend so much time there with Luke and not at least be proficient in some of his Force abilities, at least remembering them. After all, the only 2 characters in all of Star Wars that are the same species as him are both Yoda and Yaddle, who were both members of the Jedi Council and contained high midichlorian counts for their Force abilities, of course. The bigger question, however, is about the whole situation, is that a year has passed since fans last saw Grogu and Din leaving Tatooine after helping Boba Fett. Being a Mandalorian and following his creed is extremely important to Din, so it is hard to believe that he has just waited around for an entire year since he was cast out of the Mandalorian covert by the Armorer. It feels like a bit of a journey and adventure that he would have started way earlier on, and at that, maybe if that was the case, it's something that we would have seen off-screen. However, what would be the point of, well, I guess any of this narrative and storytelling if that was to be the case? Of course, in my own thoughts and opinions as a Star Wars fan, I still find it a little bit difficult to comprehend it, as I think essentially he's saying that there's a year between each season, or at least each installment so far, since, everything with the Mandoverse, a year apart of Season 1 and Season 2 of The Mandalorian, a year apart of Book of Boba Fett and Season 3 of The Mandalorian is pretty much what we're gathering here, essentially. So even then, it feels like a little bit too long, especially as this article is talking about. It feels like he would have gotten on this whole adventure going to Mandalore and everything like that a little bit sooner. So really, even then, in my own thoughts and opinions, I honestly have to say it, I still think it's kind of wrong. I don't know that Jon Favreau is saying the correct thing, I think, essentially. And this is coming from a Star Wars fan's viewpoint here, of course. We all are entitled to our opinions and thoughts, and I would love to hear yours in the comment section down below, of course. I think that, in a way, Jon Favreau is kind of misinterpreting this once again, essentially. As the rest of the article goes on the read, since the Armorer told Din exactly what he needed to do in order to cleanse himself, travel to the mines of Mandalore, one would assume that his #1 priority after helping Boba Fett would be to go directly there. The plotline surrounding Bo-Katan and the Darksaber and everything like that also hit the same speed bump when it comes to the timeline here overall, especially after what we recently saw in the premiere of Season 3. At the end of Season 2, Bo-Katan was fairly upset that Din was in possession of the Darksaber instead of her. Once again, it is hard to believe that 2 years have passed since he obtained it from Moff Gideon, and she has not even contracted him or looked for him since really all that much, or challenged him to fight for the Darksaber or anything like that. And even then, it's hard to believe that maybe Din didn't take it upon himself to train more with the Darksaber and get to, I guess, know its powers and everything like that a little bit more, train with the Darksaber, even if it was just himself. Maybe it wasn't with Ahsoka or any other Force sensitive or lightsaber welding a character out there. Anyway, from there, that is where the article concludes, and as I had mentioned at the beginning of this video, I have this full article linked in the description down below for you guys to check out there as well. An overview of this, essentially, my final thoughts and opinions and gathering from this, essentially, is that what Jon Favreau is saying is that there is a year apart of each installment of the Mandoverse, essentially. A year apart of Mandalorian Season 1 and Season 2, a year apart of Mandalorian Season 2 and the Book of Boba Fett, a year apart of the Book of Boba Fett and the Mandalorian Season 3, essentially. And a lot of us are finding that difficult to believe. I think, once again, he's misinterpreting it or something like that, probably. So really, only time will tell. I think if for anything, all this stuff, it makes more sense for it to kind of play out all back to back to back, and that there really isn't all that much time, that much of a time gap between all of these different stories and installments of seasons and shows. I would love to hear all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Of course, this has been Unofficial Star Wars. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great one, guys. May the Force be with you as always. Peace out.